My colleague Bernie Sanders said shutting down the government is a serious and dangerous action that we must do everything possible to prevent. Shutting down the government would impact tens of millions of our fellow Americans who would be unable to access government services. My colleague and friend Jackie Rosen said a government shutdown would be devastating to Nevada families. We need to solve this, and we can. We have solved a lot of difficult issues in the Senate. This is not too hard to solve. My friend and colleague, who is the ranking member on appropriations, has worked incredibly hard. Senator Murray has worked incredibly hard on appropriations for years. Oh, I've got to find my favorite. My colleague, Chris Murphy, and my friend, made the statement, there's a time and a place to debate health care, just like there's a time and a place to debate energy policy, immigration, and education, but not when funding the federal government and all the lives that are impacted by it hang in the balance. I could not agree more.
Mr. President, the Senate is now 7 days into a government shutdown, a needless and harmful situation for our nation and federal workers. Senator Lankford expressed deep frustration, saying Congress should keep the government open while continuing negotiations, rather than using shutdowns as a political weapon. He criticized Democrats for adding unrelated provisions, such as climate programs, public broadcasting funds, and electric vehicle incentives, to their funding bill, instead of passing a clean resolution to maintain current spending levels. Lankford reminded colleagues that many Democrats have previously called shutdowns dangerous and devastating, yet are now allowing one to continue. He urged passage of his Prevent Government Shutdowns Act, which would keep the government open while forcing Congress to stay in session until appropriations are completed. His message, stop the political games, reopen the government, and fix the process so Americans don't suffer from Washington's dysfunction again.
Mr. President, we're 7 days deep into a government shutdown. What a ridiculous waste of time. What a painful, ridiculous waste of time for the nation. I can't tell you how frustrating it is because I've been here long enough now to be able to see what the negotiations look like. Let me tell you what it just looks like for the last few years even. Let's go back just through the Biden administration. Every single end of September, as we approached the deadline for government funding, this body had a conversation. Do we want to remain open and continue negotiating, or do we want to shut down? And every single time during the Biden administration, this body said it's harmful to the American people and to federal workers to have a shutdown. Let's keep things open and continue to be able to negotiate. So the end of every September, which is the end of our fiscal year, this body voted to keep the government open and to continue to negotiate. But what happens when the Trump administration comes? Well, during the Trump administration, Democrats have determined that they want to show they're fighting and raging, they're the resistance against President Trump, and so they've determined the best way to do that is just to be able to shut the government down. The same effect happens for federal workers. The same effect happens for the nation. We have the same opinion across the world as the entire world looks at the United States of America, the greatest nation in the world, which is apparently not able to keep its government open. Because my Democratic colleagues have determined they want to show that they are the resistance. Well, who gets to pay the penalty for the resistance? And what does that really look like? We've had several votes that have happened here where we've had what's called a clean continuing resolution. This body knows it well because we voted on 13 of them in the last 4 years. A clean continuing resolution, and passed all of them. It was just a moment to say, can we keep the government open and continue to negotiate? The body determined, yes, let's keep negotiating, but let's not hurt federal workers and their families, let's hurt members of the military and their families, let's not hurt them. Let's keep the negotiating here. So we did that 13 times in just the last 4 years, until now. My Democratic colleagues, as the president knows full well, have brought forward a proposal. Their proposal is titled Continuing Appropriations and Extensions and Other Matters. Now, ours is just titled Continuing Appropriations and Extensions. Theirs is titled Continuing Appropriations and Extensions and Other Matters. It should make you say, well, what are the other matters? Well, ours just keeps the government open, that is, Republicans, just keeps the government open at status quo, where we are. Same level of spending, same functionality, that's where it focuses in on. My Democratic colleagues have brought their own proposal, which is $1.5 trillion in spending addition, and they include a couple new little nuggets in there, and other matters. They throw in like Section 135, which has a new element on carbon management expenditures, dealing with fossil fuels. They have a new section on climate change initiatives that are built into their and other matters. They have Section 154, which is getting additional funding to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They have Section 2306, which allows a new extension of electric vehicles getting access to HOV lanes. These are the demands that they put in to say, we will not reopen the government unless we get electric vehicles into HOV lanes, and additional money for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and carbon management expenditures. And oh, by the way, there was a $50 billion rural health care fund that Republicans passed in the One Big Beautiful Bill. They also want to get rid of that $50 billion rural health care fund, saying we need to wipe that out. Can I tell you, rural hospitals really need the help. $50 billion would really be a huge help for them. We have called that the moonshot to be able to bring rural health care up to the standards that they need to be across the country. They just wiped that out and included that in their in other matters section. To say, yes, we want to open up the government, but we also want to close down more rural hospitals at the same time. Listen, we have disagreements on things. It's not we're just different parties. We come from different states and different areas. We have different perspectives. Welcome to America. We have different opinions on things. That's what this body is supposed to be about. But when we have disagreements, we should be able to actually sit down like grown-ups and talk to each other and figure out how to be able to solve it. That's what actually should be done. This is not a radical concept. This is a pretty straightforward concept. Surprisingly enough, my colleagues have agreed with me in the past on this. Let me just give you some examples. My colleague, Senator Ben Ray Lujan, in September of last year said shutting down the government should be a non-starter. My colleague, Senator Mark Warner, said government shutdowns unleash chaos on federal workers, delay pay for service members, and weaken our position on the global stage. My colleague, Bernie Sanders, said shutting down the government is a serious and dangerous action that we must do everything possible to prevent. Shutting down the government would impact tens of millions of our fellow Americans who would be unable to access government services. My colleague and friend Jackie Rosen said a government shutdown would be devastating to Nevada families. It would increase housing costs, take away food assistance for seniors and children in need. My colleague, Senator Mark Kelly, September of 2023 said a government shutdown would have serious impacts. Service members won't get their paychecks. Airports would have major delays. Nutrition assistance for children could be cut off. We can't let any of that happen. My colleague, Senator Elizabeth Warren, said the least we can do, the bare minimum we can do, would be to pass a continuing resolution to keep the doors open and the lights on. My colleague, Brian Schatz, said, I've seen the same thing over and over again. Shutdowns don't work. My colleague, Senator Gary Peters, said a government shutdown will be a disaster for our economy and for people in Michigan and across the country. My colleague, Tim Kaine, said, I'm a senator from Virginia. Some of the hardest effects of a shutdown would be seen in my state. My colleague, Senator Dick Durbin, has said, negotiating to avoid a government shutdown holds the livelihood of the American people and the proper functioning of this government hostage. My colleague Amy Klobuchar has said shutdowns are not good for the economy. And how about this one? Oh, I've got to find my favorite. My colleague, Chris Murphy, and my friend, made the statement, there's a time and a place to debate health care, just like there's a time and a place to debate energy policy, immigration, and education, but not when funding the federal government and all the lives that are impacted by it hang in the balance. I could not agree more. So we have an opportunity just to be able to open the government up. We have literally a bill on the floor today, just like we had yesterday, that's already passed the House of Representatives, that would just open us up for another 6 weeks now, allow us to be able to get appropriations work done, and to reopen. The same thing we did 4 times during the Biden administration in September, the same thing we've done 13 times in the last 4 years, just to be able to keep the negotiations going and to not have all these consequences. I've worked for years to be able to end government shutdowns. So my colleagues that are here on the floor know it full well. We've talked about it before multiple times. I have a bill that's called Preventing Government Shutdowns. It's very straightforward. It just says if we get to a moment like this, instead of federal workers and their families suffering the consequences, we do. We have to stay in session 7 days a week. We can't move to any other bill other than appropriations. And we have to be able to get our work done. It is as simple as if you don't finish your work at class, you have to stay after class to finish your work. But it holds everyone else harmless and puts the pressure on members of Congress where it should be. This is not a controversial issue outside of this body. The last time we had a vote on this bill, we had 56 votes, and one member that was absent that day stated publicly would have voted for it if they'd have been in that day. So we would add 57 votes. We just need 60 to be able to make this thing law, and so that we would literally never have a government shutdown ever again, ever. We would still have the debate on budget issues. We're going to have issues of budget disagreement. That's going to happen. We don't agree on everything. We should have the fights on budget, but we should have the fights here and hold everyone else harmless in the process. We're 57. We just needed 60 votes. And literally this day and this time wouldn't happen. We need to solve this. And we can. We have solved a lot of difficult issues in the Senate. This is not too hard to solve. My friend and colleague, who is the ranking member on appropriations, has worked incredibly hard. Senator Murray has worked incredibly hard on appropriations for years. Knows this process can be done well, but the last time we did appropriations in the time and in the order they should have been done was 1997. 1997. So let's fix our process. The entire country is staring at us thinking, can't you guys get this together? Yes, we can. We just have to agree not only to reopen the government, which should be the lowest threshold, but then fix our process of how we actually do this work to make sure that we actually get the 12 appropriation bills done on time. And when we don't, we stay after class until it's done and just stay at it. We can figure this out. There are 100 smart people in this room, 100 smart, stubborn people, but 100 smart people in this room. Let's figure it out together. I yield the floor.